Hello everyone, this is Logan59XP here for another episode of the Nin-Cast here on April 9th of 2023, and today we are here to talk about the Super Mario Bros. Movie, because there's no way I can't talk about it. So, you know what? Let's just get straight into this. But before we talk about the movie itself, we need to go over some backstory. Or backstory? It's not the right word. You know what I mean. We have to do some preamble. We have to build up to it because I think it's worth talking about kind of the lead up to the movie and my expectations for it and what kind of the internet's expectations were for it as well. So let's rewind to when this movie was first announced, or at least the first time I think it was announced. Maybe it was announced like back in like 2015 when like the Nintendo and Universal partnership first started with the theme park. It may have been announced way back then, but as far as I remember, it was first officially, like, by Nintendo themselves announced in, I think, September of 2018 on Twitter when they said, hey, we're working on a Mario movie with Illumination, and the guy that runs Illumination will be an executive producer, and also Miyamoto will be an executive producer and all that. And I think that was the first time that they told us there will be a new Mario movie, and it's coming out, and it's going to be made by Illumination. And when we first heard that, I think the collective consciousness of the internet was like, why Illumination? Now, of course, we quickly figured out why. Because Universal, and Universal's working on the theme parks. So they want to have that corporate synergy, right? I get it. But obviously, Illumination, I mean, if we were doing a tier list of the animation studios, I think Illumination would be, if not at the bottom, they'd be close to it. Now, I admittedly have not seen many Illumination movies. I think I saw the first Despicable Me eons ago, but that's about it. I haven't seen, I think, maybe the Lorax? Again, eons and eons ago. But I haven't seen basically anything from them for the most part, at least of my own volition. I remember, like, forever ago in a doctor's office, they had one of the Despicable Me's on, like, one of the TVs or whatever, but that's a whole other conversation. But the point is, I haven't seen pretty much any of the Illumination movies, like, fully. I've seen them in little bits and chunks. I think we may have seen the first Despicable Me in theaters way back when it first came out, but I really don't remember. Point is, I've never seen pretty much any of the Illumination movies in any real capacity. But obviously I'm very aware of their reputation, which is not very high. Which is why it was kind of baffling, even though it made sense from a synergy perspective, that they would get chosen as the animation studio. However, a couple years later, we got the announcement in, I believe, the September 2021 Nintendo Direct, which is also very interesting that it was announced in a Direct, because they don't do this with anything other than their mainline stuff. They don't even talk about the mobile games in Directs, for the most part. Yeah, we had the Pikmin Bloom thing, but that was only there to announce Pikmin 4. The only reason they put Pikmin Bloom in that Direct was to build up to Pikmin 4, which is why every single reaction to that announcement, the second they showed Pikmin Bloom, every single person was like, Are they doing it? Is this the build-up? Is this the, like Arlo's reaction where he's just like, are they gonna do the thing, or are they screwing with us? Because the only reason you put Pikmin Bloom in a Direct is if you're gonna announce Pikmin 4, and they did. But anyways, I'm getting off track. This is about the Mario movie. But point is, in the September 2021 Direct, we got the announcement of the cast for the Mario movie, and to say it was interesting would be putting it lightly. Most of the, criticism and also memes and all that stuff was of course around the man himself, Chris Pratt, but also, Seth Rogen, Jack Black. There were a couple other choices in there that people were like, actually, that might not be too bad. Like, for example, the person that plays Princess Peach, I forget her name, and then there's Charlie Day as Luigi. There's a couple of them that people were like, okay, that's actually not too bad. It's actually pretty alright. But then obviously the Seth Rogen and Jack Black, and then of course the Chris Pratt. Like, the Chris Pratt as Mario thing has been a meme for like 2 years now. It has been such a huge meme for how weird that casting choice is. Especially once we finally got to see trailers of the movie, everyone else was doing a pretty good job. Like, no one had any complaints with like any of the other characters, basically. It was just the Chris Pratt thing. And the problem wasn't that it was Chris Pratt specifically, it was the fact that, at least in those trailers, he didn't sound like Mario at all. He didn't even attempt to sound like Mario. And spoiler alert, in the movie, sometimes he tries to sound like him, sometimes he doesn't. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in my opinion, I don't think it ultimately ended up mattering that much, which is not that surprising, because I kind of figured that I'd be like, yeah, it's there, but everything else is pretty on point, so it's not really a big deal. It doesn't detract from the movie, in my opinion. But again, we'll get to that later. But obviously, when the cast was announced, like, it was the biggest thing to come out of that direct, right? Like, everything else in that direct was obliterated off the face of the earth. And I feel really bad for Splatoon, because Splatoon already got shafted at E3. See, this is a whole other conversation. I find it extremely baffling still 2 years later that Splatoon 3 was not at E3 2021, even though they announced it in the direct before it. And then when they showed off the single player or whatever in the September 2021 direct, they had it right after the Mario movie news, so nobody cared. But that's a whole other conversation. But it was completely overshadowed. No one even remembers it was there, because, I mean, enough with that. Point is, when they announced the cast, it was a big, the internet went crazy with it, especially the Chris Pratt. The other ones too, but especially Chris Pratt. But of course, we held reservation, and we were like, okay, these casting choices are kind of weird, especially Chris Pratt. But you know what? Let's see what it's like. And then the first trailer came out, I think, in October 2022. I think is when the first trailer came out. And in that trailer, we got to hear at least a little bit of him at the very end. And yeah, it's Chris Pratt. And then all the other trailers, for the most part, it's basically just Chris Pratt. And again, spoiler alert, in the movie, it's mostly Chris Pratt. But there are a couple of times where he tries, and it kind of works. But for the most part, it's just Chris Pratt being Chris Pratt. But I think it didn't detract from the movie, so it's not really a big deal. But anyway, so the reason I'm focusing on the Chris Pratt thing is because that was the one thing going into the movie that I think a lot of people were extremely skeptical of. Because once we got to hear Luigi and Seth Rogen and Jack Black, people were on board with Jack Black with Bowser. People were on board with Seth Rogen. People were on board with basically every other voice except for the Chris Pratt. That was the big one that people were still on. And it doesn't help that he's the main character, right? Like, if he was some side character, if he was Toad, hell, if he was Luigi even, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But the fact that it's the main character, the Mario in the Super Mario Brothers movie, was definitely something people were worried about. But then the movie came out. It came out on April 5th. It was actually originally supposed to come out on April 9th, which is funny enough the day I actually saw it because I just got back from seeing it. And with all that preamble, with all the Chris Pratt memes, and with the trailers looking pretty promising, but we'll see. What do I think about the movie? I think the movie is, for the most part, pretty solid. It's nothing amazing, it's nothing groundbreaking, it's not the best movie ever made. I'm not even saying it's the best video game movie ever made, because I haven't seen enough of them to really say that for sure. The only other video game movies I can really compare it to is Detective Pikachu and the first Sonic movie. I did not see the second one. We were going to, but it never happened. So that's the only two I can really compare it against. And if we're going by accuracy, from an accuracy standpoint, the Mario movie destroys the other two. But this is not about comparing the movies and which one's better. That's a whole other conversation we could have, and I'm not in the position to really do it. But enough with all that. Let's just talk about it. So let's just go. We're gonna go through the movie and tell you about the things that I liked, the neat references, and even maybe the one or two bits that I was kind of like, this. I get why it's here, but didn't need to be here. So the movie starts basically with the first trailer, like the first trailer with the "Do you yield? I do." Like that whole sequence. That's literally how the movie starts. We get no. Before we talk about that, let's talk about the Illumination logo. So, the Illumination logo, like a lot of logos these days, has like a variant. You know how the Disney logo gets like a new variant every movie? It's stuff like that, right? And you'll see the Warner Bros. Logo get that. So first, it starts with the regular Universal logo. No fancy changes, just a stock Universal. Stock Universal logo. Cool, whatever. Then we get the Illumination logo, and of course, because it's the Illumination logo, we have a minion. So take that for what you will. But we have a minion in a go-kart, and then as the Illumination logo is lighting up it plays the Mario Kart 8, not the Mario Kart Wii, not the Mario Kart 60, the Mario Kart 8. Do, 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 do. And that was pretty neat. And fun fact, and we'll get to this later, there's actually more Mario Kart 8 references, even beyond the Mario Kart 8 stuff we already saw in one of the trailers when they showed off, the carts and stuff. But we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, so that was kind of neat. I mean, yeah, Minion, whatever. Look, for better or for worse, the most well-known thing about Illumination is Minions. I don't like it, but it is what it is. But it's cool they had the little Mario Kart thing, obviously, because it's the Mario movie. And they had the little Mario Kart 8, do. That was cool, but whatever. Then the movie starts and we get, the little title crawl. It's like, Universal and Nintendo presents Miyamoto and whatever the guy from Illumination's, like, whatever. And then it literally starts with the first trailer. The first trailer where they go to the ice castle with the it's like literally that whole sequence is just the beginning of the movie. There's like 1 or 2 additional scenes, but basically if you've seen the trailer, if you've seen the first trailer, that's the beginning of the movie. Almost shot for shot. So, yeah, that's how the movie starts. And he gets the Power Star, who's gonna stop me? And then it flashes to, I believe then it flashes after that point to something we had already seen uploaded as like a standalone video, but I never actually watched it because I wanted to save it for when I actually got to see it. But then we get to see, again, I know I just saw it, but if I get the order of some of these wrong, apologies. But I believe right after that whole Penguin Castle sequence, it hard cuts to the Mario Bros. Rap. If you don't know what the Mario Bros. Rap is, have you seen the OG Super Mario Bros. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show? I don't remember the lyrics. It's been forever. But where plumbing's a game. That they put that in the movie, and that's how that's our first introduction to the Mario Bros. We get to see the little commercial where they have the old school rap from the old cartoon. That is pretty cool. And if it wasn't spoiled in the trailers, I'd probably be more floored at it being in there, because we all like to meme about how Nintendo will never acknowledge the CDI games, but you want to know something they've also never acknowledged, except no one talks about it? The old cartoons. Have you ever seen Miyamoto or anyone at Nintendo ever acknowledge that any of those old cartoons ever existed? No. And yet, they put the old theme song in the movie, which is cool. It didn't need to be there. They really didn't have to do that, but it was cool that it was there. And of course, they changed up, and it's the and basically the ad where they use the song is of course for their new plumbing business or whatever. And then it cuts to I believe and then it cuts to a pizza place, which is actually the first of many references. It's called Punch Out Pizzeria. There's a ton of Nintendo references in there. Unfortunately, there's not any to any of their bigger franchises, but the smaller franchises, they got Wrecking Crew, for example, Spike from Wrecking Crew. It literally says Wrecking Crew on him. He's badgering Mario about what are you doing? This commercial's trash. You're gonna fail. And then Luigi's, that whole thing, right? So we start to see some of the references pop in, and of course we'll see more as the movie goes on. Although most of the references to other Nintendo properties are actually in the first part of the movie in Brooklyn. Once they go to the Mushroom Kingdom, there's almost no references to anything that's outside of the Mario universe. Obviously, there's all the Donkey Kong stuff, and we'll get to that. But in terms of Zelda or Kirby or whatever, there's none of that. None of that. They got Punch Out. They got the NES at one point, and a couple other things like Wrecking Crew, but they don't have anything you're not going to see a Triforce in the background or a Warp Star in the back. You're not going to see any of that, unfortunately, but that may be because they're saving it for later, but we'll talk about that at the end. So we get that whole little bit. So the sequence, so I'm just going to kind of round up the sequence in Brooklyn. So the sequence in Brooklyn, they start up their plumbing company, because of course Mario and Luigi are plumbers. I know there was a thing years ago where Miyamoto or someone was Mario's not actually a plumber or whatever. I don't know if that was actually true, but to anyone that thought that he wasn't a plumber because of some report from 2017 or whatever, this kills it, right? A Nintendo-made movie. Well, Nintendo-produced movie, Illumination technically. You know what I mean, right? A Nintendo-produced movie with Miyamoto at the helm has Mario and Luigi running a plumbing business. They're plumbers, period. End of discussion. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that, but I know there was that old report from I don't even remember who, but I don't know, it's a whole thing. Anyways, So the whole sequence in Brooklyn is probably my least favorite part of the movie. There's some decent stuff in it. Obviously, anytime there's a reference on the screen, of course, in my mind, I'm like, hey, look, reference. I know, like, Cosmonaut in his, like, Space Jam 2 review was, like, memeing on the whole things but unironically, it really does work. Am I gonna be jumping out of my seat at any of them? No, but I'm gonna be like, that's cool. It's cool, it's cool. Reference, oh, okay. You want a reference I was not expecting? And I actually completely forgot about this until right before I started recording. But during that sequence, when Spike is like, oh, your business sucks, it's gonna fail, or whatever. And then, like, afterwards, like, Luigi gets a call from someone for their first job. And the ringtone that plays is do 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 do. I probably did a terrible impression of that, but they used not the original. It's a new version, but they used the GameCube startup sound. That was pretty cool. I almost forgot about it because it's like the only reference to like anything beyond like the 80s or 90s in the whole movie, because they stick pretty closely to like the older stuff for the most part. Obviously there are exceptions, but generally speaking, most of the references they make when it comes to other Nintendo stuff tends to be like the old stuff from the 80s and 90s, like Punch-Out!, Wrecking Crew, and also we get to see a shot of Mario when he's depressed after his father telling him that like he's a failure or whatever. Well, he didn't quite say that, but after the scene at the dinner table with the whole like Mario family or whatever, and he goes back into his room and he has an NES and he's playing Kid Icarus. And we get to hear him die, and it plays the do 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 boo. Yeah, that was something I was also not expecting, was to see like an actual physical piece of hardware, like at least like maybe like a sticker or something. But like I wasn't expecting to see Mario playing an NES game. He's playing Kid Icarus, so that's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. So there's another Nintendo franchise you can add to the pile. They reference Kid Icarus. Again, sticking to stuff from the 80s and none of their big franchises, again, because maybe they want to save that for later. But again, we'll get to that later. But yeah, then they go to like the person's house and we get the whole antics with the dog, which didn't really care for that part, to be honest. Because it's basically just, because at that point you're just waiting for them to go to the Mushroom Kingdom. You're just waiting for that moment to happen. So that whole sequence with the dog, that was probably the most Illumination part of the movie. That was clearly like the one scene that Illumination like wrote. I mean, I know Illumination wrote the whole movie, but like that was the most, like especially the human designs, like not all the human designs, but a lot of the human designs are definitely Illumination humans. They're kind of a mix between Illumination and like a Wrecking Crew type thing. And obviously all of like the canon Mario characters are very much Mario characters. Oh yeah, also at the beginning when they're doing the commercial, right after that, we get to see, I don't know if he has a name, but we get to see basically like the Charles Martinet cameo. It's very brief, and he shows up only twice in the movie, at the beginning and at the end. But we do get to see someone also dressed in like overalls or whatever. He's talking about, hey, that commercial is great, and then he does like a Yahoo, and then it's like, oh, that's the Charles Martinet cameo. So that's a whole conversation, whether or not you should Charles Martinet have actually played. That's a whole conversation. I, at least traditionally, have been of the opinion that I don't know if we really want to be able, like, do you really want to hear like the thick like Italian accent for a whole like movie? I don't know if you really want to hear that. And what's funny is they address this in the movie, because right after they do the ad, which is the one part of the movie where like Chris Pratt is like actually trying to sound like Mario, where he's like, hey, we're here to do your plumbing. Like that's the one part of the movie where he actually tries to sound like Mario, and it kind of works. But then right afterwards, he's like, do you think the accent was a bit too much? So they pretty much kind of acknowledge the fact that like maybe you wouldn't want to hear the accent for the whole movie. Again, that's a whole conversation. Obviously, Charles Martinet, I mean, obviously it's great that he's in the movie at all, but I also don't necessarily think that he should have been Mario. But again, that's a whole conversation. I'm not saying Chris Pratt should have been Mario either, but I also don't think Charles Martinet would have necessarily, like, it sounds cool on paper, like, come on, get the guy that's been voicing Mario for like 30 years. Like, I get it. But also, do you really want to hear that for a whole movie? Like, where he's going all in on the woohoo, let's go, do you really want to hear that for an hour and 30 minutes, or however long the movie actually is? I don't know how long it is. I think it's an hour and 30 minutes. Anyways, so point is, we get the whole antics with the dog or whatever, and it's like, whatever. It's the most illumination part of the movie. It's probably my least favorite part. I know I said before that the Brooklyn stuff is my least favorite part, but I think in particular that whole scene with the dog in the bathroom, that was definitely my least favorite part of the movie. It wasn't horrible, but we could have done without that. We could have done without that. But then after that, they end up going out, and we actually see on the TV another reference, although this time just for Mario stuff. We get to see, and everyone was predicting this, but we get to see Pauline as like the mayor of Brooklyn. What a surprise! Wow, I'm absolutely shocked. Yeah, everyone kind of predicted that from a mile away. And she's wearing the red outfit from Odyssey. All that. They have a couple other Odyssey references in the movie as well. Like they have, of course, the scene at the wedding. We get to see Bowser, and he's in the Odyssey wedding. They make a couple of. They don't have Cappy or anything. But they make a couple of obvious Odyssey references. We get to see that little bit of the desert area from the trailer, which is only in that one scene, by the way. They never actually go through it. It's just that one scene from the trailer, basically, where we get to see what is very clearly not the same area, but like heavily based on the desert world from Odyssey. But anyway, so yeah, then they go on the TV. Mario's depressed. He's playing Kid Icarus, and then he switches the TV and he sees Pauline. It's like, hey, don't worry, we're gonna fix this. And then everything's going crazy. And then they're like, hey, this is our chance. This is our chance to fix things. So they go over there. They go into the sewers. They try to fix the problem. And then they end up stumbling upon a warp pipe. And Luigi goes into it, and then Mario goes into it, and they get separated. Luigi goes to the Dark Lands, I think is what it's called in the movie. Like the place we saw from the trailer with like the castle and the lava and stuff. And then we see Mario. We get to see that shot from the first trailer where he goes on the mushroom, and then Toad is like, hey, don't eat that one. That whole thing is still there, pretty much intact as it was in the trailer. They go, and we get to see that one, and then we see Toad and Mario go off. We see Toad and Mario go off to the castle, and basically, if you watched the Game Awards and you saw that clip where they were like in the Mushroom Kingdom and they were like walking around or whatever, getting to the castle, that scene happens after that. As far as I think there might have been a shot. I think there's a shot of Bowser when they're talking about like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this mustachioed plumber or whatever. That happens a couple of times in the movie. I might skim over it, but we do get to see a couple of shots of like Bowser like, oh, we gotta go and get Peach and make her marry me, all that stuff, right? All the obligatory stuff. Again, another thing pulled from Odyssey, but yeah. And then we get Peach and all that stuff, and then we get to the training course. So. What do I mean by the training course? So that one shot from one of the trailers where Mario is getting absolutely wrecked by like common Mario like blocks and enemies and stuff, that's actually a training course that Peach had set up. And we get to see Peach breeze through it easily without a sweat. And I can already tell that is going to be a little controversial to some people. The fact that she can just blaze through that course. And later on in the movie, she basically says, she doesn't say it directly, she only says it after Mario is like, you did it on your first try, didn't you? And she's like, yeah, I did it on my first try. So it's like, that I know will definitely annoy some people. I didn't think it was a big deal. It's probably the most blatant case of, what's the term? I think Mary Sue, I think is the term. I don't know. It's the most obvious case of that in the whole movie, but it's the only time in the movie I think it's really a thing. I think that Peach, for the most part, because I know some people were worried about how they were going to handle Peach, but I think for the most part it works. Again, that part where she just blazes through the training segment, okay, that was a bit on the nose, but everything after that point I think is totally fine. She clearly shows that she can put up a fight, but not to the point that I think it overshadows Mario. I think it's mostly done just fine. And I thought Peach was done fine in the movie. I think she was fine for the most part. Also, when she's doing the little training sequence and she destroys the wooden Bowser, she does the kick from the Super Smash Brothers. And of course we get to see that part later on where like Mario does like the forward air, and actually he does it at the very end of the movie too, but this might be okay. The shot from like where he's fighting DK, that was clearly on purpose. That was a very clear, hey look, it's the Super Smash Brothers move. That was very blatant. The one at the very end of the movie, that one I think might that one I think that might be a coincidence, because they don't really reference that stuff too much. It's really just that one shot from the trailer where Mario is doing like the forward air on Donkey Kong before he gets beat up. That's probably the most obvious case of like Super Smash Brothers reference in the whole movie. But we do get to see the kick from Peach. She doesn't do like the hi-ya, I don't think, but she does the move. So like, yeah. Or she practically does the move. It's not exactly, but whatever. So we get to see Peach blaze through the course, and we get to see Mario fail over and over, but then he slowly gets better. And then there's all the power-ups. We get to see that we have the mini mushroom from the original New Super Mario Bros. Not Super Mario Bros, New Super Mario Bros. I believe that's the first one where they introduced the small one. And we get to see, of course, later on, we get to see some of the other power-ups. But yeah, so we get that, and then eventually he doesn't beat the course, but he gets really close, and Peach is like close enough, and then they go with Toad and Mario, and then they go off to the Kong Kingdom to get, the Kong army, so they can defeat Bowser, because they can't defeat them on their own without it. So they go to the Kong Kingdom, and for some weird reason, all of a sudden, Take On Me starts playing as we have like a Kong in a cart with sunglasses, and then they go flying around the whole place. I mean, that could be a level in Mario Kart 9 right there. That whole section where they're just like racing around like the Kong whatever, trying to get to like the king, Cranky. That could be that right there is Mario Kart 9 material. Looking at you, Nintendo, because you've obviously greenlit that. So put that in Mario Kart 9. And we get to see the glider. I don't think did we see the glider before that point? I don't know if the trailers showed the glider, but we get to see the glider a couple of times in the movie. Once we get to like the Mario Kart stuff. But yeah, so then we get to do that whole thing. Then we get to the point where it's like, oh, hey, we need your army. And then Cranky Kong is like, no. And then Mario is like, I will fight DK. And then he's like, oh yeah, try me. And then we get to see the fight from the trailer. And we get to see a couple of references that I did not know about. So let's get the first and most obvious reference out of the way. DK, Donkey Kong, he's the leader. They include it, and not a remix, not a Melee version. No, the original 1999 version by Grant Kirkhope, who unfortunately is not credited. That's a whole other controversy right there. But, the song is credited to being Donkey Kong 64, but they don't specifically list Grant Kirkhope, which is really weird because they credit the guys that made the Mario Bros. Rap back in the 80s, but they won't credit Grant Kirkhope, even though a few years earlier they got him to do a new remix of Spiral Mountain for Ultimate. Oh, whatever. That's something that's pretty dumb and should absolutely be rectified, because come on, it's Grant Kirkhope. How can you not, like, what? Like, I hope that when the Blu-ray comes out, or the streaming version comes out, they add in, that he made the DK rap. Because he made the DK rap, because, of course, Donkey Kong 64 was a Rare game, and he made all he made them. Obviously, he's most well-known for Banjo-Kazooie, but he also did, Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong 64. So he's the one that made the DK rap, and they use the original N64 version, which is kind of weird. I'm surprised they either didn't use the Melee version or they didn't use like a new version, but it's cool that it's in the movie, but it sucks that Grant Kirkhope wasn't credited properly, and I hope that gets fixed in future releases. So we get to hear the DK rap, so that's kind of cool. And then we get to see the fight, and it starts exactly the same way it does in the trailer, where we get to see again Mario do the Smash Brothers, yeah, he's doing the forward air, and then he gets absolutely destroyed. And then he starts to get the power-ups, and then the first power-up he gets is the small mushroom. And then eventually, he gets his ass kicked even more. And then all of a sudden, he gets the cat suit from 3D World. And that was kind of cool. Now, I think did we already know about the cat suit? We knew about the Tanuki from one of the trailers. I don't know if we knew about the cat suit. Was the cat suit, was that in one of the trailers? I don't know. I don't know if I knew about that or not. I don't know. It's cool. It's one of the few references to newer Mario stuff in the movie, because a lot of the movie relies on like the classic, 80s and 90s stuff. Understandable for the first movie, I suppose. But of course we do get a couple references, like for example, spoiler alert, at the end of the movie they play Gusty Garden for a little bit in the credits, and we also get like this weird, like, Luma who's like suicidal or something. It's weird. It's a weird Luma that's just like begging for the apocalypse or something. It's kind of weird, but I don't know. Whatever. but yeah, so we get to see the cat suit, and once he gets the cat suit, then he just wrecks Donkey Kong, and then he wins, and then they join, and then it's all good. And then we get the flash. I'm skipping over the Bowser stuff, admittedly, but I don't know when this specifically happens. But we'll just mention it because I can't not talk about this. This is probably the weirdest thing in the whole movie. Like, actually the weirdest thing in the whole movie. I don't remember if this happens after this scene or before this scene or whatever, but I'm going to talk about it now because we got to talk about it eventually. We get a scene at some point, I think in like the middle of the movie, where Bowser is playing the piano. And by the way, on the piano it says Ludwig von Koopa. We don't get to see any of the Koopalings in the movie, unfortunately, but we do get a reference to one of them, so they exist. They exist in this universe. Oh yeah, and by the way, there's a line like later, sometime in the movie, where like Peach is like, "There's a whole universe out there," which I think we heard in one of the trailers. But you can interpret that as a galaxy tease. You can interpret that as a other things that might happen way later on, which we'll talk about when we get to it at the end. But anyways, yeah. So we get this whole weird scene of Bowser playing this song. It's very interesting. It's so weird. It's easily the weirdest thing in the whole movie. And what's funny is, apparently Jack Black wrote that song himself. That wasn't like Nintendo, that wasn't Illumination. He wrote that song, which is interesting. Yes, that was definitely the weirdest part, I think, of the whole movie, was definitely that whole thing with the piano when he's doing the peaches. Like, that was interesting. It was definitely, it's memorable, I'll give it that. It's definitely unexpected. But yeah, basically at this point, Bowser knows about, oh, the Mustache Man and the princess are, trying to stop us, yada, yada, yada. And then we get to see the scene, and then we get to the part, where Mario and Peach and Toad all get carts. And we saw a little bit of this in the trailer. But one thing that's really cool, and I was not expecting at all, was the first scene where they're like, "Okay, go get your carts." Like what Cranky Kong's like, "Hey, go get your carts." We hear in the background, do 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 do, not the original version, do 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 do. It's not the original version, but we get to hear a remix of the Mario Kart 8 menu theme. Now, I know earlier I mentioned that they had the, the 3, 2, 1, go. They had that for the Illumination logo, but I was not expecting to actually hear a piece of Mario Kart 8 music in. Now, granted, it's the only time they use it. I don't think they use any Mario Kart 8 music when they actually get on Rainbow Road, which we'll get to in a second. But we get to hear that do 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 do, and that's cool. Again, it's a remix. It's not the original, but it's cool that it's there. Like, hey, look, something that's not from like Super Mario Bros. 3 or whatever, like something new. Obviously, we get a ton of remixes of like older stuff, and all that stuff is cool too. Obviously, obviously we get to hear do 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 do, and we get to hear a bunch of other like stuff from like 2 and 3 and War. Like we get to hear, not 2, but like we get to hear a bunch of other classic Mario tunes. We get to hear, I think, the Peach's Castle theme at least once. But it's really cool that we got to hear something from like a newer game, not even a mainline game. But granted, Mario Kart is so freaking big that it's its own entity in and of itself. I mean, the fact that they put Mario Kart in the movie is proof enough of how big Mario Kart is. The fact that it's in the movie at all proves that, like, oh, it's so a big deal. But anyways, and what's funny is it goes beyond just the music, because when they're selecting their kart parts, the kart parts on the wheel are the Mario Kart 8 kart parts. Like, exactly, you get to see the same car parts, the same wheels. It's all there, which is really cool. Now, obviously, that's something that's going to date the movie when Mario Kart 9 eventually comes out. Yes, it will come out eventually. They're not just going to keep Mario Kart 8 running forever. I mean, Rockstar is coming out with GTA 6. I don't know, whatever. That's a whole other conversation. The fact that Mario Kart 9 is approaching 10 years old. Actually, fun fact, in a couple months, when we're in June, that'll be the 10th anniversary of E3 2013. Oh, E3, I need to do a video on E3. I know I'm a little late to the party, but I do want to talk about the current state of E3 at some point, but it's a whole other conversation. But, like, we're going to be at the 10-year anniversary of E3 2013, which, fun fact, and again, I'll talk about this more in that video if I ever make it, I actually went to E3 2013 technically, not really, technically, again, I'll save that for another time, but that was the E3 that they announced Mario Kart 8 and the official proper announcement. I know they technically teased it at E3 2011, but the first actual announcement of Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS and Wii U. Oh, it just reminded me of some. We'll talk about this when we get to the credits. But yeah, so we get to see, they're picking their kart parts, and we get the Mario Kart 8 music and the Mario Kart 8 sound effects and all the Mario Kart 8 stuff. There's a lot of Mario Kart 8 stuff in the movie. Which is funny, because when we first saw the first, I think this was in the second trailer that showed us, hey, look, Mario Kart's in the movie. I think I was kind of thinking, is that Mario Kart Wii? And then later on, we get to see, like, oh, they got the zero gravity, and it's Mario Kart, So yeah, we get to see the whole sequence, basically, of them on Rainbow Road, and if you've seen the trailer, that's more or less how it plays out. There's a couple of extra things here and there, especially at the end, but if you've seen the Mario Kart sequence from the trailer, I'd say about 70% of that is what happens in that sequence. There's some extra sequences here and there, but that you get the gist of how that sequence plays out if you've seen the trailer already. It's a cool sequence, but we had already seen a good chunk of it in the trailer, so take that for what you will. And eventually, Mario and Donkey Kong, so one thing we did not see from the trailer is one of the Koopas, who's in one of like the big carts that's trying to kill them. He turns into a blue shell, because of course we gotta have a blue shell reference. It's Mario Kart, and we get to hear all the sound effects of it whirling around, which is all taken from the game. Again, not literally, I think they're like remade versions, but whatever. We get to hear like what I think is the Mario Kart 8 version of like the blue shell sound effects. And then both Mario and Donkey Kong get hit by it, and then they fall into the water below. They get eaten by a fish, and then they fight. And they're like, you suck, no, you suck, no, you suck. We get a little back and forth. And then eventually, they discover that the cart they were riding on is in there. And then they fly off in a rocket. And then I think after that point is when they go. Yeah, so at this point, Peach is captured by Bowser, and then Bowser's setting up the wedding, and we get to see a couple more references. Like, we get to see King Bomb Bomb from Mario 64, we get to see Boo, we get to see, was Petey Piranha there? I don't think Petey Piranha was there, but we got to see King Boo. I think it was King Boo. It was a Boo, but I think it was King Boo. I'd have to check to see if it's actually King Boo specifically, or just a Boo. But we get to see what I think is King Boo. We get to see King Bomb Bomb, maybe Petey Piranha. And there was a Piranha Plant there, but I don't know if it was Petey Piranha exactly. But yeah, we got to see a couple of references. Hey, look, it's the thing from Mario 64. We get to see a couple more references. We like our references. Yeah. So at that point, Mario and Donkey Kong, they fight through. We get to see that scene from the trailer where like Mario and DK are in the Mushroom Kingdom and they're beating up all the Koopas. And we get to see Donkey Kong get the Fire Flower. All that whole sequence. You get, Mario gets the Tanuki. Peach sneaks a ice flower into the bouquet. She uses it, fends off the Koopas for a while. And then eventually, Bowser launches this like nuclear bullet bill at the Mushroom Kingdom to destroy it, and then Mario kicks the eye of the bullet bill and then gets it to follow him around, and then he finds the pipe that he came through originally, and then in a kind of weird scene, Mario sends the bullet bill through the pipe back to Brooklyn, and then the bullet bill like blows up in Brooklyn, and as a consequence of that, the whole like Mushroom Kingdom gets covered in this like the pipe aura, and then everyone in the Mushroom Kingdom, Peach, Bowser, Toad, Luigi, everyone gets sucked into Brooklyn, and then they end up in Brooklyn. And then all of a sudden, Bowser's castle is there, and then that's when we get like the final fight, so to speak. Even though I'm not sure if I'd go as far as to call it a final fight, but we get kind of the final big scene of the movie, where then we got Bowser and Mario, and he's not doing very good. One theme in the movie that's also maybe going to be a little controversial is that for a lot of the movie, Mario is not very good at being Mario. Now I know why. It's because they want to build up to him like eventually, learning to fight or what. I get it. But that was a little annoying, especially in combination with that Peach thing I mentioned earlier, where Peach just throws herself through like the course like it's nothing. But it gets better as the movie goes on. And yeah, and then like, you know, Mario's not doing good, and then Luigi comes in and like, you know, is like trying to help him, and then we get a call back to a line from earlier in the movie where he's like, you know, we'll be fine as long as we're together, yeah, all that stuff. And then Luigi, I'm probably glossing over a couple of scenes here, but this is the kind of the gist of it. And then Mario and Luigi get the superstar that Bowser got at the beginning of the movie, and they turn invincible, and then they start wrecking Bowser and everyone else. And then we get this, and then like for the final shot, I mentioned this earlier, we get to see Luigi and Mario do the move. They did the move again. I think that one was probably a coincidence. I don't think that was like a deliberate like reference, as opposed to like the one from earlier where like they were clearly mirroring like the Smash Ultimate, like the artwork from Smash Ultimate on the box. Like that was clearly the reference they're going for that scene. This one isn't really like that. Oh, that reminds me of something I completely forgot to mention. Way back during the fight with DK in the arena, one thing I was also not spoiled. So I was spoiled on the DK rap because I saw the Game Explained video that was like Grant Kirkhope wasn't credited, and yeah, they should credit him. That should absolutely be fixed in the future releases on Blu-ray and stuff. But anyways, we also get to see something I wasn't expecting and was not spoiled on at all. We get to see Diddy and Dixie for like 2 seconds, but they're there. So that's cool. Diddy and Dixie are in the movie. Is Funky Kong in the movie? Because I remember there's a lot of Kongs in the movie that are Funky Kong stand-ins, but I don't think that any of them are actually Funky Kong himself. Maybe we'll see that in the future. I don't know. But that was a bit of a missed opportunity. As far as I could tell, there was no Funky Kong. They had Cranky Kong, they had DK, and they had Diddy and Dixie, but they didn't have Funky Kong, even though they had a whole sequence with carts. They could have totally gotten Funky Kong on the Flame Runner and everything, and people would have lost their minds, but whatever. It is what it is. Again, that one Kong at the beginning with like the sunglasses, that is not Funky Kong. That's just a random Kong as far as I'm aware of. I don't think that's Funky Kong, but I could be wrong. Maybe it actually is. But anyways, going back to the end of the movie. So yeah, we get to see, you know, they defeat Bowser, their parents are proud, all that stuff, and then the movie kind of wraps up, you know, okay, and then it's like, and that's, again, I know I'm glossing over some things and some things I'm probably forgetting to talk about, but that's the gist of the movie, I would say, in a nutshell. And we get post-credit scenes, because of course, oh, actually, no, let's talk about the credits first. So the credits plays, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, it's the Mario Bros theme, or it starts out with the Mario Bros theme as like that weird, suicidal, psychotic, whatever Luma appears on screen, and then it starts playing, you know, and then it transitions into the credits, and we get to see, you know, then they have the Mario font for all the credits, and they have various Mario themes playing. But one thing I was not expecting. Okay, I know I said before, this is the thing I was not expecting. This is the thing I was not expecting. But you want to something I was definitely not expecting as well? You could throw into that pile? At the very end of the main credits, I'm not talking about the credit, like the standard black scrolling credits. I'm not talking about that. The main like colorful credits with the font and the music. That the first run of the credits, at the very end. Well, first I noticed that they had a couple of notable Nintendo names in there. Now, obviously Miyamoto's in there because he's like the producer or whatever. But then I also saw Takahashi and Koizumi. I saw a couple of recognizable names in there, so that's kind of cool. And then at the end of that sequence, they list President of Nintendo, which of course is Furukawa. And then I feel like I should be, I don't know if I should say I'm surprised or not surprised. I don't know. I mean, I understand why it's there, even though it doesn't really make sense as opposed to like when Breath of the Wild did this, but you know what? They probably were like, you know, let's go for brownie points and screw it. Why not? People would like it. I don't know. Maybe there's a real actual reason why this was put here, but right below Furukawa's name, former president of Nintendo, Satoru Iwata. Obviously, I am under legal obligation to like that reference because I'm from that era, and that era is an era that means a lot to me. And it's really cool that he's referenced, but I can't help but have a problem with it only because, as far as I'm aware of, the Mario movie didn't start actually moving forward until after he died. Breath of the Wild made sense because obviously Breath of the Wild was in development like in 2013, 2014, right? So it made sense to include Iwata's name in there alongside Kimishima, because he was there for like a good chunk of Breath of the Wild's development. But the Mario movie is from long after that. Like, I could be wrong. Maybe Iwata was there for the really early talks of the Mario movie, and that's why they're including him. And if that's the case, fair enough. I'm not gonna say no to him being credited in the movie. That's cool, but I want to know why. Like, are they just putting it in there because they know people would be happy to see him credited, or is he actually in the movie because he actually did something? Because again, this movie is coming out in 2023, and the movie was first announced officially, at least, in 2018. Were they really working on the movie with Illumination as far back as like 2014 or 2015? I mean, actually, you know what? I said earlier that there is the whole synergy with Universal, which is probably why they went with Illumination in the first place. You know what? Maybe Iwata was involved in the early days when they were first discussing with Universal about Mario movies. So maybe that's why he's in there. I don't know. I know it's a weird thing to harp on, because I should be thrilled that he's credited because it's Iwata. We all like Iwata and all. But it is a little weird because I feel like it's a bit too late to include him. If this movie came out in 2017 or 2018 or 2019, I'd be like, fine. But it's coming out in 2023, and it's like, how much involvement did he like? Again, I know this is gonna sound really bad, but did he really have enough involvement to justify a credit? I know I'm harping on this probably way more than I should, and again, I really shouldn't even be complaining about this. I should be thrilled that it's there at all, but it's okay. Long story short, because we gotta move on. It's cool that he's credited, but also, how much involvement did he really have in the movie? Because I imagine he had very, very, very little involvement. He was probably there for the very beginning when the deal with Universal was first signed for the theme parks. So he might have been involved for like a month before he unfortunately died in, I believe, July. So he might have only had involvement for 2 months of like the 8 or 9 years it's taken him to bring this to the big screen. So I don't know. Again, I know it's a really weird thing to harp on. It's cool that he's credited. I'm really, I know it sounds like I'm complaining. I'm really not. It's just really weird. But yeah, so they include Iwata as a credit. Cool. Weird, because he had pretty much no involvement, because this movie came out way later. But whatever. Okay, we gotta move on. And then we get to see another version of the Peaches song from earlier, is like the first credit scene, which is like, okay. And then we get to sit, and then basically we get the rest of the credits, which is, your standard credits. And this is the part where they show songs, and we see something that I didn't even recognize was in the movie, but then again, I haven't played the game, so maybe that's why I haven't noticed. But when they're listing songs, we get to see, also they also have Holding Out for a Hero, the song from Shrek 2, not the Shrek 2 version, obviously, but like the original version or whatever. See, there's a couple. That's another Illumination staple. Is like pop culture song. Like, oh hey look, it's a song from real life. There's a couple of those, but I didn't think it was a big deal. Yeah, there's the Take on Me. There's the Holding Out for a Hero. And I think there's like one other one in the movie. There's like an AC/DC song. I didn't recognize it, but it's there. But anyways, so yeah, we get to sit through the credits sequence where we get to hear more Mario music, and we get to hear, again, the Gusty Garden. It's just the do 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 do. It's just that part of it, but it's there, so it's cool. I'll take my Galaxy shoutouts, because Galaxy is my favorite Mario game. And we do get to hear when they're using the Luma earlier on in the movie. They used Luma sound effects. Like we get to hear the little Luma, the Luma, like, talking sound effect. There's a couple of Luma sound effects in the movie whenever the Luma's on screen. They're ripped right from Galaxy, but anyways. So we sit through the credits, and I knew there was a post-credit scene. I didn't know what it was. I was secretly hoping it'd be something way bigger than it actually was, because I can't help it, and we'll get to that in a second. But the post-credit scene, spoiler alert, is Yoshi. Because we get to see Yoshi's for a very brief second when they're on their little journey from the trailer. We get to see Yoshi's for like 3 seconds. 3 seconds. They're barely in the movie. But at the very end of the movie, they tease, hey look, Yoshi. is going to be in the next one, basically. So that was their post-credit scene, is Yoshi, which is probably a bit tame for a post-credit scene, in my opinion. But then again, I wasn't really expecting them to go all out. I mean, this gets into a whole conversation. We'll talk about this after. But so that's the movie. I know I probably didn't do the best job describing it, but the long and short of it is, it's a good movie. It's not the best movie. I have my issues with it, but for the most part, it's solid. And if you haven't seen it and you've liked what you've seen from the trailers, you're gonna like the movie. Alrighty, now that we've talked about the movie itself, I want to talk about the future, because as I just talked about with that Yoshi scene, there's clearly a future. There's nothing announced officially. I do not believe, at least at the time of recording, it is official that there will be another Mario movie, but come on. We all knew the second this thing was announced, this thing was going to be at least 2, if not 3 movies. This thing is getting a trilogy, at least. But what I am secretly hoping for, I will acknowledge right now, this is a long shot. And they might play it safe. They might not feel like they need to. They might feel like it's a bad idea. I don't know. But I am secretly really hoping for that these Mario movies, because again, there's going to be at least another one, because why else would they have the Yoshi tease if there wasn't going to be another one? That after these Mario movies, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever, that they eventually expand into other movies. When I say other movies, I don't just mean, like, okay, remember like in 2015, I think, that's how far back this goes. There was that rumor about like Netflix series with Zelda. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about just making more Nintendo franchises in TV and film. No. I want the big one. I want them to expand this whole universe into all the other big franchises, and eventually, again, I know this is a long shot, but I can't help it. I want this so badly. Basically, I want this thing to lead up to the Smash Bros. The NCU, the MCU is out, the NCU is in, the Nintendo Cinematic Universe. And this is the reason why, way earlier when I was like, oh yeah, they don't reference Zelda, or they don't reference any of their bigger franchises, I'm wondering if this is why. They're not, they can reference Kid Icarus, they can reference the smaller ones that aren't that important, but they're not going out of their way to referencing Zelda, or Kirby, or Metroid, or any of those other franchises, and you want to know why they might be doing it? And again, this is a long shot, but they might not be referencing them because they're saving them for their own movies that are going to connect with the Mario movie. I know, but I can't help it. I want the NCU, dang it. I want the Mario movies to lead up to a Zelda movie, and then we get like a Kirby movie or a Metroid movie or whatever, and then eventually we get the Avengers, the Justice League, the big movie that it's all building up to. The Super Smash Brothers. And that's the reason why I feel like I want this so badly, is because because here's the thing, right? If there was no Smash, no, I wouldn't say do this. I mean, it'd be neat, I guess, but like the only reason I'm so adamant on everything being connected is because there's something they can build up to. They have their Avengers. Nintendo has an Avengers that they can build up to. If they choose to. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll say, you know what? Let's keep the Mario movies as its own self-contained thing. We can have Zelda stuff be its own. They might have all their series be like their own self-contained thing from different studios that have nothing to do with each other. And if they do, fine. It is what it is. But I can't. But I want the NCU. I want the post-credit scene of like the third Mario movie to be like a shot of like Hyrule or something. I want this so bad. We're not gonna get it. We are not gonna get it. But I want this. I want the NCU to be a thing. I want them to do Zelda. I want them to do Kirby. I want them to do all those franchises, and then we can have a Smash movie. And you wanna know why that would be awesome? Because it would fulfill the biggest thing people wanted from World of Light. What's the biggest complaint about World of Light? Well, there's a couple of complaints people have. World of Light is its own conversation, but what's one of the big complaints of World of Light? Lack of cutscenes. Why do people want cutscenes? Because they want character interaction. If they could basically, not literally, but if they could basically make a Subspace style movie where we get to see the characters interact and stuff, that's all anyone would ever want. That's all anyone wants. Okay, that's not the only thing people want, but like, wouldn't that be really cool? At least on paper. Obviously, they can screw it up. I'm not saying they can't, but the potential of a Smash movie where we get to have Mario and Link and Samus and Kirby and all these characters would be awesome. But they have to build up to it, right? You know, you do your Mario movies, and those do well, they're received well, then you do a Zelda movie. And if that's received well, you keep moving with that. And they, like, obviously it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It'll probably take them, like, 10 years, at least. Like unironically, the phases. Don't literally copy the phases, but unironically do the phases thing. Or we do this movie, then we do that movie, then we do that movie, and then it all builds up to, like, the first Smash movie, and then the Smash movie after that, we bring in, like, Sonic or something. Okay, this is going completely off the rails, but that's what I want to see this turn into. Eventually, it'll take time. A long time, at least 10 years, if not more. But it would be really awesome if we could get, if, like, these Mario movies, then we get a Zelda movie, then we get a Metroid movie, then we get, like, a Kirby movie. Pokemon, okay, Pokemon's a whole conversation, because Pokemon's like its own independent-ish entity, like that. Apologies for that. Pokemon's its own conversation, but all of, like, the stuff that is, like, 100% Nintendo blood franchises, like, yeah, we could have all that stuff, and we could have interconnect and be awesome, but I'm biased. I'll admit right now, I am heavily biased because Smash is my favorite franchise, so obviously getting a Smash movie on the big screen would be awesome. It would basically fulfill what people wanted out of World of Light when it comes to, like, character interaction and stuff. It basically would be Subspace 2 ish, and people would love that, but are we gonna actually get it? I don't know. Probably not. This is realistically, we're gonna get another Mario movie, and then we'll get one movie after that, and it'll be a trilogy, and then they'll be done for a while, and then they'll do Zelda as its own independent thing from a completely different studio. It has nothing to do with anything, but it is worth noting something. Nintendo owns the rights to this movie. Universal doesn't own it. Illumination doesn't own it. Nintendo owns it. Which means, if they wanted to, even if we had a Netflix show, and a show on this, and a show over there, and a movie over there, from Warner Bros., like, they could technically legally have them all connect anyway, because the copyrights for the movies themselves are actually owned by Nintendo. Not Universal, Warner Bros., whatever. But again, I'm getting way off track. This is not gonna happen. This fantasy of mine of, like, Smash Bros. Is so not happening. But, man, no. You know how I said Link? Yeah, screw that. We don't even need to do that. God, the day when the post-credit scene, like, you know, people would lose. I know, I'm emphasizing, I'm talking about something that's never going to happen. This is not happening. We're probably just going to get 2 more Mario movies, and that's it, and whatever, fine. But, God, could you imagine if at the end of, I can't help it, at the end of the 3rd Mario movie, we see, like, Mario and Luigi's new house that we get to see at the end of the movie, and then all of a sudden, the doorbell rings, and they walk outside, and there's an envelope on the ground, and then he turns it around, and we see the stamp, and everyone in the theater goes nuts. Oh, this is so not happening. This is so not happening. I'm getting myself hyped up over nothing, but god damn it, I want this so badly, but we're not gonna get it. But anyways, potential future of the potential NCU aside, this movie on its own, like I said, not flawless, not amazing, but it's solid. If you like what you've seen in the trailers, you're going to like the movie. And I'm obviously looking forward to what the future may bring. I'm curious to see what other worlds they might bring in, what other characters they might bring in. Again, we got Yoshi teased. Maybe we'll get Birdo. Of course, Birdo just came back in Wave 4, so they're obviously having Birdo be more of a thing again. Maybe we'll get to see a new, like, movie original characters, and we'll see those characters. Like, it wouldn't be kind of interesting if, like, we got a movie original character and then we saw that movie original character get added to, like, Mario Kart 9 or something? I don't know, but point is, movie's good. Not amazing, but it's good. If you like the trailers, you're gonna like the movie. And with all that being said, what do you guys think of the movie? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Did you think it was okay? Whatever your thoughts on the movie, good, negative, or neutral, by all means, let me know down in the description below. And with that being said, this is Logan59XP, and I'll see you guys next time.